This video is about Denver 7 News and Darren O'Conner. The news keeps picking up stories that I report on, months after I report on them. When Officer Waylon Lolatai left Denver, Colorado, where he was under investigation for assaulting an inmate, he never should have been hired on in another police department. But Boulder police, they're not police officers, they're hobo hunters. That's what they do. Darren O'Conner, he wanted some information from me so that he could help others. But he's not interested in helping others, he's interested in enhancing his prestige. Tony Kovaleski has done special reports on two separate places that I was at. Well, two separate instances. One of them, he spoke about Officer Waylon Lolatai. Darren O'Conner let this man know about Waylon Lolatai, but Darren O'Conner was going to help me with my case and just never did. He pretended that he was going to, but really, he wasn't, and he didn't. What he wanted to do was use the information I had to enhance his prestige. Same thing with Tony Kovaleski. These men are not men. Officer Waylon Lolatai never should have been allowed a badge again in his lifetime. Now, when Darren O'Conner spoke with Tony Kovaleski, he spoke about three assaults that Officer Waylon Lolatai was involved in after his assault against me. This is how homeless people are treated, and it's not just Officer Waylon Lolatai doing it. I'm not black, but I still stick up for black rights. I'm not a Native American, but I still stand up for their rights as well. I'm not a homosexual, but I stand up for their rights as well. Who stands up for my rights? Just me. Homeless people are not human beings to your society. When something terrible happens to a homeless person, if it's a Native American who's homeless, the Native American community, well, what do? Do they do anything about it? Do they look at homeless natives the same way as they look at Selena? I know I do. When a homeless black person is victimized, does Black Lives Matter actually care? They don't seem to. But I know that I do. I stick up for homeless rights. Even if I'm not the particular homeless group that's being picked on, I recognize that these are our rights. Darren O'Conner, I recorded our phone calls for a reason. Now, Denver 7 News, they didn't care what I had to say. They were fine with slandering my name when the situation with Natalie Bollinger happened. But they absolutely refused to hear a word I had to say. Same thing with Tony Kovaleski. Darren O'Conner didn't care either. I stood up for the other victims I stood up for the other victims despite the fact that they threw me away over Darren O'Conner, a man who has never actually been homeless, a man who writes many articles, yet can't tell the truth about me, can't come forward with what he knows about me. People victimized me until I was screaming at the top of my lungs for help. And then they victimized me for screaming at the top of my lungs for help. To this day, I have to be afraid of going to the police. I'm in Chapel, Nebraska, where the police officers here refused to do anything about the abuse before Natalie died. And then after she died, they did everything in their power to cover for the wrongdoing of other officers in this department, including abusing me further. And I'm a bad person, apparently, for speaking out. I'm a bad person, apparently, for standing up for our rights. I'm a bad person because I want the same rights that I'm trying to fight for black people, for Native people, for women, for homosexuals. The right to be heard, the right to defend ourselves, the right not to be victimized by law enforcement. When Selena disappeared, the same thing that happens with many Native Americans happened with her. The police didn't do shit. It was up to her friends and family to go out and try to find her. And complete strangers, the cops didn't do shit. The cops victimize us. You don't have to be homeless to be victimized by the police. Being poor is good enough. But if you're poor and you live in a house, you have more rights than I do. If you're poor and you have family that cares, you have more rights than I do. Officer Waylon Lolatai isn't the first bad officer that Boulder Police Department has hired. We need to go back to Officer Keith Steinman and his years and years of torturing the homeless, of trying to start fights with them, and then charging them with trying to start a fight. I truly believe that every police officer in the United States should be hung in the streets for the public to see. They don't care about us, they care about rich people. In their eyes, it's the rich people who pay their wages. It's Donald Trump who pays his wages. That's how they look at it. It's not the taxpayers who are paying their wages. It can't be the poor who are paying their wages, because obviously all poor people are lazy. Is that not correct? I worked almost the whole time I was homeless until I couldn't. Through tooth pain, through infections, through illness, I went to work. And I got paid squat for it. Never enough to live on, even when I worked 2 full-time jobs. And that'll kill you quick. Tony Kovaleski in Channel 7 News, Denver 7 News, did another special on Clearview Behavioral Health. I reported on them before Denver 7 as well. I reported on how I was treated there. And you look at the show from Tony Kovaleski about Clearview, you'll notice that the things that I reported on that happened to me, Clearview did this to hundreds of other people and ultimately killed a man doing it. It is treatment like this that pushes people to the point of being suicidal. Who was Natalie supposed to go to for help? Imagine if she'd gotten sent to Clearview. Every time I end up locked up for trying to turn in police, I think about Natalie and about her family thought that Joseph Lopez should have turned her in instead of shooting her in the head. I'm glad, after getting to know more about Natalie's family, I'm glad that Joseph Lopez put her out of her misery. Her family didn't deserve her. Her sister especially. Her twin sister, Alicia Bollinger, did not deserve to have a sister like Natalie. Alicia Bollinger is a terrible excuse for a human being. I don't hear Black Lives Matters giving a shit about my life, but I'm white. I don't hear any of these women's rights movements saying anything about my rights, but I'm not a woman. There's no gay rights activists speaking out for me. Are there? Are there? I'd like to know. I believe in doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, but you know what? Sometimes breaking the law is the right thing to do. Sometimes fighting fire with fire is the right thing to do. Natalie Bollinger and her friends stalked me for an entire year before she was killed. She took offense to me speaking out in public. When I went to Boulder, Colorado to see my older brother, I was assaulted in public. Now, I've had probably close to 100 phone calls in the last 2 weeks from people harassing me, people threatening me, people just being outright creepy. And I continue to speak out on YouTube and Facebook because I can't go to the police. I cannot go to the police and believe that they are actually going to do their jobs. Because I am more native than the natives in their eyes. I am more black than the blacks in their eyes. I am more poor than the poor in their eyes. I am more homosexual than the homosexuals in their eyes. All of these things that you get to hear about the Native Americans and black people and homosexuals, all the terrible things that they're going to do, all of the hate mongering that people throw on these groups, the one group that encompasses them all is the homeless. The one group that doesn't have any legal protection is the homeless. The one group that doesn't have million-man marches, or at least 100-person or 1,000-person marches, it's the homeless. The homeless just have to take it. You think your life is bad because you're black? Well, at least you're not homeless. You think your life is bad because you're a Native American? At least you're not homeless. You think your life is bad because you're a homosexual? At least you're not homeless. But I got worse than the homeless because of the way that I was painted by the news. The way I was painted by Denver 7. The way that I was treated by the police and by cowards like Darren O'Conner.